Welcome to Season 2 of the Shop Stool Podcast, a podcast for woodworkers and the maker community in general. With Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks, Jordan Crawford from Periodic Furniture Studio, and Robin Lewis from RobinLewisMakes.
All right, here we go. Hello everyone, I hope you're all very well. Welcome back to Episode 5, Season 2 of the Shop Stool Podcast. Today I'm joined by only one of my co-hosts. Joey, how are you today?
Very good, Robin. How are you going?
Not too bad, thanks. And Jordan Crawford, unfortunately, won't be on the show today. My name is Robin Lewis. Thanks for tuning in, and we have an awesome show lined up for you today. So last week we touched on this. Joey's got a quote-unquote Joey story for us, and we sort of alluded to it. So that's definitely where we're going to be starting with today. Joey, do you want to run us through a bit of what happened and tell us the story?
Yeah, okay, so I maybe we'll just kind of brief what the job was. And so a local council, so not actually my council, because I'm right on the borderline of two areas, and so it's not actually my council, but the neighbouring council, kind of extending onto their building. They wanted a new reception area, and so when I was contacted by the people, I thought, great, this is going to be a cool job. A reception desk sounds like a fun thing to build, which it was.
It was just a desk at this point.
Yeah, it's a reception desk. It's quite big. I mean, it started out 4.1 long and 600 or 800 mil deep. Right. And there was quite a lot of specifics about it because it's a public building, it's a council building. So there was lots of backwards and forwards. I actually redesigned it completely 5 different times, and I would send them a design, and it would go through this bureaucracy of all these people having the input about what it needed to do and if what met safety requirements and it didn't meet.
I was going to ask, are there a lot of regulations on? I mean, are there things like you have to have roundovers on everything? Or?
That wasn't the concern. The main concern for them, interestingly and sadly, I suppose, is the actual safety of the 2 people who will be behind the reception desk. They get apparently quite a lot of irate people coming in and kind of threatening physical harm to whoever's representing the council. And so
it's got to be a bit deeper than you would normally have a council.
So at the moment, because they have to allow for a disabled wheelchair access, there's a big cutout in the reception area so somebody can wheel up and talk to the receptionists. But of course that means there's a big open hole where anyone can be physically face to face with the people behind the counter, and it's quite intimidating for them. So they wanted some more space and they wanted some height. So the first thing is that the desk height is actually 1 meter high, so they're sitting on high kind of architect's chairs. And the desk is 1 meter deep, and so even leaning over.
Yeah, that's pretty high.
Even if someone leans over to take a swing, for example, they're not really getting close to anybody with a bit of sense to lean back. So that was the big concern, and so there was a lot of design issues around that and just making it work. So the main problem that I could see straight away, and I knew this from experience, and so I thought, this time I'm going to cross all my I's and dot my T's. Yeah. You know, I'm going to I knew the money was going to be a problem. These big bureaucratic companies don't like to give money out. And in fact, on a weird note, just to be able to work for them, I had to essentially do the paperwork that I would do to open an account with any other supplier. So they had to get my bank account details and do background checks and do all this stuff just to provide them with a product, you know, not the other way around. It was a bit strange. So jumped through these hoops. Eventually, after a lot of backwards and forwards, I got the job, and I sent through the deposit invoice, and I didn't really hear anything for a bit.
And at this point, had you verbally come to an agreement with them that the deposit was going to be a thing?
Yeah, I said I'll need a deposit and I'll get a progress payment because of the size of the job, and then I'll get a final payment once we're all installed.
Yeah.
So the deposit invoice goes through, and I don't have I have taken away a payment period from my invoice. So I used to say 7 days to pay or something like that. I've taken that off. You've got until the date, whatever date I choose and put on the invoice, usually it's within the current week. So I know that I get paid. So if I do a job on a Thursday, it's due that Friday, the next day.
So you demand a deposit within a week, within 7 days, sometimes from clients?
It's not so cut and dry with deposits, because at the end of the day, it's up to the clients to decide if they want to do the job. If they don't want to pay the deposit and don't get the job started, then that's no skin off my nose if they don't pay it whenever they want. The problem with some of the accounting software is you have to put a date on it. So I usually just click a week, the next day, then a week later, that's for the deposit. In this case, I think I did that. I had a week on it. Anyway, the correspondent I'm dealing with said, we pay on the 20th of the following month.
Yeah, which I think is quite a standard common practice for businesses.
Yeah, it is for businesses who are able to deal with that kind of cash flow system. It doesn't work for small businesses. Anyhow, so I said, okay, in that case, I won't be able to do the job. Sorry. Because I'm not going to wait around for up to 2 months, depending on which day you actually put the invoice in. It could be up to 2 months before you get paid. And no small business is going to wait for that. It's just not going to happen. So she came back and said, oh, really, that's a shame. Look, we can do a special payment. Every Tuesday we can get a special payment put through, and I just have to get it signed off by like 4 different people. And and then on the Tuesday nights we can do a special payment for these kind of rapid payment things. And I said, that's great, fine, pay the deposit. Deposit came, got the job done. And in the meantime, I'd kind of rewritten this out in an email, so everyone was in writing. We all knew what was happening. I could tell at that point. I was like, this is going to end not ideally.
Yeah.
Because you can just tell the bureaucracy. There's the message I'm sending to this person who's representing the council. There's no way that message is going through to the 4 other people in the accounts.
So that person's just okaying it in the hope that nothing goes wrong.
And I know that's happening, but you can't say, hey, did you actually send that through to the... you can't question them.
The English that you're using is making me distrust you, therefore I need some more confirmation. Yeah.
But, and it's more like the industry you're in is making me distrust you, and therefore can you like write this out? But, you've got to, at some point, you've just got to bite the bullet. So... I did the job, and I made sure that I had to get my progress payment into them. The invoice had to be in a couple of days early so they could organize the signatures so they could pay me on the Tuesday. And so I was trying to get the jobs kind of sorted out at a point where I could get the progress payment to them, which I did. And as it turned out, after the day I sent the progress invoice, the work on the actual desk just kind of really took off, and we kind of really made good progress. And it was suddenly, within a day, really close to being finished. So that meant that the following Tuesday, which was the day they owed me a progress payment, was it going to be the install day as well.
And were they made aware of this?
Yeah, because they wanted it ASAP. So it was like, as soon as you get it done.
Right, okay. So they were hoping that it would be done sooner.
That's right. So I was like, okay, great. And it kind of dawned on me on the Monday. I was like, you know what? They owe me money tomorrow. We're meant to be delivering this thing tomorrow. I shouldn't actually deliver this until I get my progress payment.
Yeah, because no council in the world works that quickly or rapidly.
Yeah, I knew, I was like, this is going to not work. But I also needed this giant desk out of my workshop. I also knew that the sooner I got it in, the sooner I could put my final invoice in. And if that meant waiting another week, okay, I could deal with that, I suppose. But
not ideal, but
I don't want to wait another week to get my progress payment and then put my foot down and say, I'm not installing this until I get my progress payment. Therefore, I have to wait a week. It's sitting in my workshop for a week. I can't do other jobs. And it becomes a bit of a backlog for me as well if I really start putting my foot down.
You're ending up in that situation which you didn't want to be in, which is the payment's
Exactly.
only going to come in 2 months. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, I'll go there, because we had to do 5 trips to deliver this thing and all these different pieces. I'll go there, I'll meet the lady who has been my correspondent. I said to her, great, we've got the first part of the desk here. We'll probably get it finished today. By the way, the payment hadn't come through at 8 o'clock in the morning. The payment wasn't sitting in my bank. I said to her, can you check with the accounts, make sure that it's going to show up today? Okay, I'm going to jump in my car and go and get that next piece. It's like an hour round trip every time I did. So I did like 5 hours of driving that day, just trying to get all the pieces backwards and forwards. Because it was kind of close to my workshop, but it's not that close.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I'll just do lots of trips. It's just going to be easier than trying to get a truck or something else. By the end of the day, the accounts lady calls me and says, I'm just looking at your invoice. We'll pay it next month as per our terms. And I'm like, wait a second. Like, the whole reason I did this job is because you agreed to pay me on the week. You know, every Tuesday is your payment day. I'm not going to, otherwise I said to the lady, I'm not going to do the job otherwise. Oh, well, that's not how we work. I said, but that's how I work.
That's how Joe Soap said you work, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's how I work. Like, you have to pay me on my terms. Like, you've agreed to this. And this, I knew I was going to have this fight, and so I'd been going over this conversation already all day. I've been going over how I was going to deal with this phone call, because I knew this wasn't going to pan out for me. And she said, you know, and I think it's important as a small business to really kind of put your foot down when you know you're right. Just because a big corporation or company, just because they are who they are, doesn't mean they don't owe you money and you haven't agreed to something beforehand. And what she wanted to happen was for me to say, oh, okay, that's right, that's your policy, I'll just wait a month.
You're a council which is notoriously known for being very bureaucratic, as you've said. Fine, I'll just hold off.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm not going to take this because I need to be paid. At the end of the day, is what needed to happen.
And I think it's worth emphasizing the fact that you had agreed on this. It wasn't like this had just fallen on deaf ears. You have this in writing.
Yeah, I have it in writing, and I even said I won't do the job if you can't pay me on my terms. Oh no, we want you to do the job. Great.
And just to double check, these terms, are they in a signed contract or is it just an email correspondence?
Just it's emails.
Right.
Because as soon as you start getting into signed things, the council won't sign it probably, because they'd have to go to lawyers, and you could imagine time delays. It's just not going to happen. And for me, that's why I offered them the out of saying, oh, I won't do the job then. Like, I'm happy. Okay, I won't do the job. If you don't want to pay me, fine, get someone else. It's perfectly fine with me. Like, I'm not begging you for the job, although it was a very cool job. So the phone call ended up with this lady saying, we're not going to pay you until she said, I think in the end, okay, we can put it through next Tuesday because you've missed this Tuesday already. You've missed the payment. And I was like, I said, in that case, I'm going to have to start taking this back to the workshop.
Yeah.
At which point she told me to stop threatening her, which brought the whole conversation up a notch. You can imagine. And I was trying to stay as calm as possible, but I was getting to the point. And I said, look, I'm not threatening you. I'm simply telling you you can't have this desk for free. You couldn't come to my shop and walk out without paying for this. So either you pay me the progress payment that gets us square at this point, or I will start removing this.
You don't have a desk.
Exactly. Now, the upside, which I shouldn't have said, but I said this, to get into the building, I had to sign in, and they gave me a swipe card so I could get in and out to get through the electronic lock. I said to her, well, I'm keeping my swipe card and I can come back whenever I want and take this desk out. And she didn't appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it was,
I can imagine.
Yeah. But, I had to be proving that I was serious about the fact that this was going to be taken away, even though I just spent all day putting it in. And I was going to start taking pieces of it. I wasn't going to take the whole desk. I was just going to take whatever I could carry.
So at this point, you've installed the whole thing?
Yeah.
And so removing it is not a case of just clip, and out it goes. There's a couple of bits involved.
At this point, I was by myself. I didn't have my assistant.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to take all the drawers. I'm going to take anything that I can unbolt, door fronts, panels. I'm going to take the LED lights off. Like the actual big carcasses of the desk had to stay there. But what happened? So what I did was I kind of left and a half drove off back to the workshop. There was one thing I'd forgotten to do. And then I could give them the final invoice because I was almost finished. The last thing I had to do was clamp on the monitor stands for their computers, which I had one in the workshop, and I'd forgotten it. So I said, all right, I'm going to zoom back to the workshop, grab this, zoom all the way back, screw this monitor stand on, and then I could give them the final invoice, which they would have to pay me the following Tuesday. And I did that, so I got it all sussed. Just as I was walking out the door from that, I get a phone call from the accounts lady saying, okay, Joey, we've made the payment. You've now got your progress payment sorted. And I said, great, I've just emailed you the final invoice, which you can pay next Tuesday. Thanks very much. And that
now,
was kind of...
Hang on. Now they've met your terms, and now you're asking for something more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they owed me 3 payments, right? A deposit, a progress payment, and a final payment. This whole discussion was about the progress payment, which they had not paid.
Yeah.
And so in theory, I shouldn't have had it on site until I got that payment. That is my bad to a certain degree.
Oh, so you should have held on to it until the payments were made. And when you're saying you should have done that, you're just saying as a best practice from the perspective of
absolutely
you don't give something away when it's not paid for.
That's right.
Okay.
The downside for me was it was going to be another week. This thing was finished, this giant 4 meter long by 1 meter long desk taking up the whole workshop space. It just needed to go at that point. Otherwise, I would be delayed on other jobs. So it's very much a way up of what's the lesser of the two evils. And I think this worked out in my favor but it was a whole situation I knew I could avoid, and I tried to avoid, and I knew it was going to happen. That's a really annoying situation with a bureaucratic working for a big company like that.
So then you've asked them for the full payment,
and it came the next Tuesday. It came. I didn't hear a word from anyone, didn't get an email, so who knows?
I wonder why they decided to pay you the full amount and not just your next installment.
Because I'd done the job. I'd done the job. No, they paid me the progress payment on that day.
Yeah.
And then as they were on the phone to me saying, "Okay, we've paid you," I said, "Great, thank you for that. I'm just emailing you now the final invoice, which you can pay next Tuesday," because I'd finished the job at that point.
But I'm surprised they didn't turn around and say, no, but we'd agreed to 3 progress payments.
There was. No. Well, 3 payments total, 1 progress payment. You have a deposit, 1 progress payment, and a final.
Okay, right. I thought they were paying it off over the next 3 weeks. I'm with you.
No. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so that was it. But
awesome.
It was just a very tense day where I'm trying to do the install, thinking about what I'm going to say, dealing with the phone calls, dealing with this lady who I had been dealing with the whole time, who was we actually saw her physically avoid us during the install. Like you walk down the stairs, whoops, turn around, walk back up. And, when you see that, you're like, oh, okay, she knows what's going on.
Shocking, eh? Shocking.
Yeah.
So there was no other emails, no other correspondence since then. They just paid you the money and everyone was happy.
Never the twain shall meet.
Crazy.
Yeah. So hopefully everything's good. I mean,
now obviously this was a pretty bad situation. I mean, you got paid in the end, so that's the main thing. But could you have avoided this, or because you've been saying the whole time this is how councils work? Could you have avoided this?
Well, like I said at the start, I went into it knowing this was going to be a problem. So I thought, I'm going to lay down the rules. I need to be paid the week of the progress payment and the final payment. That has to happen. I'm not waiting for a month. This was made out clear. And the problem is assuming that the person you're speaking to in this corporation is going to just turn around and talk to the accounts people and have the discussion and say, oh, this job's coming up and we need to do the payment. Okay, great. That does not happen in the big corporation, and I can't make that happen. All I can do is give them as much kind of emphasis on the fact that it's very important that this happens. My advice, I suppose, is that you need to go in with this multi-$1,000 job. You need to go into this for a company who is huge. You have to expect there's going to be some communication breakdown, not necessarily between you and the contact within the company, but inter-company breakdown of communication. And that's something you can't work in, but you have to try and anticipate it as best as possible and try and get there before it happens.
Because if you were to go in any more aggressively with your, we talked about contracts earlier, or I need this and this and this, and you were to be more, I guess you run the risk of losing the job. So would it be worthwhile making sure that you are talking to accounts directly, or would that never happen?
I suppose I could have asked to do that in hindsight. I could have said, put me in touch with the person who's going to make the payment, or give me their email, and I want to email the invoices and stuff directly to them and not just have it passed on into company. That's probably a good way of avoiding it. There may be some pushback on that. This person I was dealing with was assigned this job. Her job was to organize the fit out of this room, and that was the contact for all the trades. So in that case, I think they may have been like, yeah, we don't, you talk with this lady and she does the other part of it. So
it surprises me, though, from the perspective that she would have no doubt had a budget. There would have been no reason for accounts to not pay you other than you are outside of their payment window. So then the question becomes, why was she not making sure that this payment happened? Like, what was the
because she was she was doing her policy, the accounts lady. The obvious thing that had seemed to have happened to me was that the contact I was dealing with just simply didn't pass on the information that I needed the payment on the Tuesday. It was just a pure either lack of communication or forgetfulness, or some kind of intended, who cares? We got the job done and they just have to wait.
Yeah.
It's a strange one.
So would this stop you from doing council jobs in the future?
For that council, I probably will never be asked to do a job. I won't say no to work if it's worth my while. I think work is work. I think I would approach working for a multi, kind of like some kind of large corporate, or approach it differently in that I might ask to talk directly to accounts. Or is there something that needs to happen to make things more streamlined? That would be definitely, if you're keen on getting paid in a certain timeline, you need to make sure that they have the ability to pay inside your timeline. Yeah.
It's interesting. In my day job, we call them opportunities. When we create sales opportunities, you have influencers and you have your billing person, and then you have your decision maker. And those are three terms that we talk about all the time, because your decision maker is the one that we talk to. There's no point in talking to anyone else. So I guess it's a similar sort of thing where, you'd be talking to either your accounts person or your billing person or a decision maker, because...
And that's essentially who I thought I was talking to. And I think maybe she was. but she just didn't pass on the information.
Yeah.
So it was just an annoying thing, and everything worked out great, and I knew it was going to happen, and it was just annoying that I had to go through it.
Yeah.
Because I knew it was going to happen, and I tried to stop it.
So has this happened before then with other companies?
Yeah, companies, not quite so bad, but companies who you might give them, big companies, I've made some prototype chairs before, and they, okay, great, here's your deposit, straight away. The deposit will go in overnight. And then the final payment, you have to wait for a month.
Yeah.
Oh, but what? You just paid my deposit in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
They literally straight away within the hour, because they want you to get onto their job. But when final payment rolls around, we'll just throw it in the basket for accounts to deal with. And that can be very frustrating.
And is it worse with companies, or do you find, because I would imagine your guy off the street would be just as bad?
I find whether it's a company or a person, the more money they have, the slower they are to pay.
Interesting. I guess that's how they got rich in the first place.
That's right, especially individuals. Often it's a case, what I've found is if you print out an invoice, which I used to do all the time, and give them the final invoice at the delivery or the install, these days that paper invoice just goes on some random pile in the kitchen bench and never gets seen again, and that's when you don't get paid. I find a lot of people work from the email list as a to-do list, and if you send them the email version, it's probably going to get paid on time.
Because I guess they're on their computer, access to their online banking.
The bank's right there.
Yeah, right. I had plumbing work done sometime last year, and the plumber who did the work just took, I expect an invoice within a couple of days from when someone's done some work, because that's obviously their money. This guy took about 2 weeks. I eventually emailed him and said, hey, where's my invoice? And he said, you're the first customer I've ever had who's actually contacted me about the invoice, which I find so strange, because the last thing that I want is 2 months down the line, we've gone away on a big holiday, and then this guy comes back and says, oh, by the way, you haven't paid me. So, get that out as quick as possible.
Yeah, it's strange. I had that with an earth mover when we were building our house. He didn't send the invoice for his work for 3 months.
Jeez.
And I did the same thing, contacted him and said, hey, we're running, our budget's getting low. Do you actually want to get paid for this job? And he goes, oh, yeah, I usually do my invoices on a rainy day, and it's been really good weather. Like, okay.
Well, that's the most casual business I've ever heard of.
Yeah, it's like, well, man, you must have a decent cash flow somewhere, because 3 months without money coming in.
Yeah. It's also just, I don't know, when you go to bed at night, I want to make sure that everyone who I owe money to, I'm paid. I sleep better that way. Yeah.
That's right.
Now, talking about money, you said that there was something else that you wanted to touch on.
Yeah. So in the same kind of conversation line with getting paid, I had a quoted on a job. So what was it? So a guy wanted a bookcase kind of around a doorway in a study room. So great. Gave them the quote. Oh, it's a bit too expensive. Can you reduce the price? I'm like, well, okay.
Is that a common thing for people to say that?
Not really. Just a second, Robin. Hang on. Hello. Hello.
Hey, I've got a delivery.
You got the plywood?
Yeah.
Just a second.
Yeah, don't worry.
I got my truckload of plywood here, Robin.
I can hear that. All right, well that's cool. We'll probably just leave this here. We'll still put this episode out because I think it's quite interesting. It's going to be a bit of a short one today, everyone. So
yeah, sorry about that, but I've got $5,000 worth of plywood to get off a truck in the rain. So
yeah, this is what happens when you run a podcast around a business. So no, it's all good. All right, Joey, that's cool. You head off to that, and we'll see you in the next one.
Okay, thanks everyone. See ya.
Bye. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for tuning in. Unfortunately, we did have to cut it short there because, Joey had to take a delivery. But that story, Joey and I have been talking about for the last couple of weeks, and we've been really excited to share that with you. So really interested to hear any thoughts or comments on that. It's obviously one of the trickier parts of running a business is actually the money side of it and making sure that works. And I guess this is something that you set yourself up for if you do decide to go the business route. So I hope you found that informative. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed this podcast, we'd really appreciate a review over on iTunes. That really does help us out. The Shop Stool Podcast is available on iTunes and most other podcast apps, as well as YouTube. So thanks again, Joey. I hope your delivery is going well. My name's Robin. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.